Dust motes swam in the single blade of light, cutting through a crack in the window's mattress seal. On the floor, the city was a web of charcoal lines on stitched-together paper. Wren's finger traced a new path, a thin artery of hope leading west. She felt the familiar weight of the dead plastic behind her ear, a smooth, useless shell where sound used to be. The silence was a physical presence, a pressure against her eardrums. A soft vibration through the floorboards announced her brother. Caleb stood in the doorway, his small frame lost in an oversized sweatshirt. He held up a limp sack, then signed with the practiced neatness she had taught him. Almost gone. He raised a grimy water filter. Broken. His stuffed owl Hoot was tucked under his arm, its one-button eye a solemn witness. Her father followed, his steps a heavier, more agitated tremor. Mateo's face was a ruin of exhaustion. He had been a man who understood the skeletal strength of buildings like this one, and now that knowledge was just a source of endless terror. His hands flew up, clumsy and large. We wait. Another week. Wren's own hands cut through the stale air, sharp and certain. She pointed a single, trembling finger at the wall. A jagged crack, a black spiderweb, had grown since morning. The building is dying. She jabbed her thumb toward their nearly empty supply crate. The food is gone, Batistaner. Formed the sign for their destination, a place that existed only on her map. We have to go to Port Blossom. Now. Mateo shook his head, a frantic, repetitive motion. The fear of what was outside warred with the certainty of what was happening inside, and the conflict left him frozen. Wren turned from him, pressing her eye to the tiny hole drilled through the door. 12 floors below, the street was a canyon of gray concrete. She saw him then. Jarek. A figure moving with a predator's liquid grace through the scattered dead. He dispatched 2 of them, a brutal dance of sharpened rebar and a weighted sling. He paused, a dark silhouette scanning the silent towers that bordered his domain. His head tilted up. For a bare second, his gaze seemed to find their window, snagging on the faint, telltale flicker of their candle. His hand rose, and a thumb sliced across his own throat. The message was absolute. A low shudder started in the soles of her feet. It was a deep, grinding groan that vibrated up her legs, into her chest, rattling the teeth in her jaw. Dust rained from the ceiling, a fine gray snow. Mateo's eyes, wide with the specific horror of an engineer who recognizes the scream of shearing supports, shot upwards. Wren's hands flashed, a final frantic command that left no room for debate. Now. The paralysis broke. They grabbed their packs, the thin bags holding the last of their world. Wren wrenched open the reinforced door, ready to lead them into the unknown. They stared. Where the stairs should have been, there was only a chasm of twisted rebar and shattered concrete, plunging into the darkness below. The tower spat them out into the gray mouth of morning. Wren led, her world a tapestry of motion and pressure. A current of cold air, smelling of wet rot and distant rain, slid down the alley, and she felt it on the skin of her face. It was a warning. They reached the corner of the street, a place that had once been beautiful. Now, the 2-story brick homes sagged, their windows like vacant eyes. From every porch railing, every skeletal tree branch, every leaning light post, things dangled. Glass pendants, bamboo tubes, spirals of seashell. They hung in absolute stillness, a silent orchestra waiting for its conductor. The chime garden. Wren held up a hand, palm flat. Stop. Behind her, Caleb froze, his small hand clutching a one-eyed stuffed owl. Father shifted his weight, his head cocked in that useless way of his, trying to capture a threat with a sense that had no place here. Wren ignored him. She watched a single, dry leaf skitter across the cracked asphalt. She tracked the path of dust motes dancing in the flat light. The air was a river, and she could see its currents. She found a path, a pocket of stillness between 2 houses, and gestured them forward. One step, then another. The world held its breath with them. Her focus was absolute, a tight coil in her stomach. Her eyes flicked from a set of metal tubes hanging above a doorway to a delicate glass mobile on a porch, reading the invisible pressures that kept them quiet. They were halfway down the block when she felt it again, a stronger push of air against her cheek. This one was wide, a wall of wind moving down the street. She shoved them back against the cold brick of a house, her hands signing a sharp, frantic command. Still. Do. Not. Move. Her father's anxiety was a visible thing, a vibration that came off him in waves. His eyes were wide, darting toward the end of the street. He strained to hear something only he could, a ghost in his ears. His foot shuffled, a nervous twitch against the overgrown grass at the base of the wall. The world jolted. A brutal vibration shot up through the soles of Wren's boots, a single, violent shudder. She did not hear the clang, but she saw it. She saw her father flinch as if struck. She saw Caleb's small body jerk, his knuckles white on the stuffed owl. She saw every chime on the block leap and tremble, 1,000 frantic hands clapping at once. The silent symphony had found its voice. The things in the alleys, the ones slumped in doorways, all stopped. Their heads, once lolling, snapped up. They turned, a field of sunflowers tracking a new sun. Their movements, once a slow shamble, became sharp and purposeful. Wren's plan disintegrated into ash. "Errands," she signed, a panicked slash of her hand. They sprinted. The world became a blur of brick and weeds, the silent, frantic swinging of the chimes, a visual scream on all sides. The pounding of their feet against the pavement was a desperate drumbeat she felt in her bones. Ahead, a black square gaped in the side of a concrete retaining wall, the sunken station. She threw them into it, tumbling from the gray light into a sudden damp blackness that smelled of mold and old water. They collapsed against a wet wall, chests heaving. Her father's hands found her in the dark. They trembled. "I'm sorry." I heard, I thought. A rage, white and pure, burned through her terror. Her own hands flew, her signs jagged and brutal. "You don't listen. You listen with your EARs, not your EARES." The chasm between them yawned open in the suffocating dark. Caleb made a small, lost sound, a vibration in the air between them. A flicker of movement from deeper inside the station snagged Wren's eye. A shape detached itself from the shadows, flowing into the faint light from the entrance without a whisper of sound. He was lean, dressed in dark, tight clothing, and held a length of sharpened rebar like it was an extension of his arm. His face was a mask. His cold eyes assessed them. He pointed a single finger back toward the entrance, where the jerky silhouettes of the dead were now gathering, a growing crowd drawn by their noise. Then he raised the spear. The movement was slow, deliberate. He did not aim for the entrance. He leveled the sharpened point directly at Caleb's chest. The shard of glass in the man's hand did not waver. It was an extension of his will, steady and absolute. My father's body was a shield for Caleb, a fragile wall of trembling flesh. The air was thick, each dust mote a suspended moment in time. My eyes scanned, cataloging exits, weapons, weaknesses, anything. They snagged on a dark recess to my left, a collapsed kiosk spilling its guts of debris and forgotten things. And there, nestled in the filth, was the glint of painted metal. A horse, rusted, dented, but unmistakably a toy from a child's music box. My focus was a thread, and Jarek's eyes followed it. He saw the horse. The stillness in him broke, not with a crack, but with a full-body tremor, a glitch in the predator's code. His knuckles whitened around his weapon. His throat worked, a dry, guttural sound scraping the air, a vibration I felt more than heard. He was cornered, but not by us. His hands flew up, clumsy at first, then sharp with a terrible clarity. He sketched the shape of a woman in the air, then a smaller shape beside her, a child. His fingers mimed a small hand letting something fall. He pointed to the rusted horse in the nook. He cupped a hand to his mouth, his face contorting into a mask of anguish, a silent scream that made the air feel thin. Then his arms swept wide, a gesture of overwhelming tide, of countless bodies crashing down. He jabbed a thumb into his own chest. Once. Hard. The only one. The man was not a monster. He was a monument to a dead little girl. The flicker of understanding was dangerous, a warmth I could not afford. I stamped it out with cold logic. My hands rose, fingers shaping the signs. Diversion. Sound. Lure them away. My father's eyes were fixed on Jarek, but his engineer's mind, dormant for so long, stirred. He looked past Jarek, down into the black water of the flooded lower levels. His gaze sharpened. He pointed a trembling finger at a junction of intersecting tunnels, a place where sound would ricochet like a trapped thing. He spotted it then, a heavy sheet of corrugated steel half buried in the rubble. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. I nodded. Jarek watched us, his haunted expression receding, replaced by a chillingly rational assessment. The plan was sound. Its cold, simple cruelty appealed to him. He gave a single, curt nod. My father hefted the steel sheet. The motion was a painful echo of the strong man he used to be. He swung, releasing it over the edge. It fell into the black. The world went silent for a heartbeat, and then the floor beneath my feet kicked. A deep, resonant boom shuddered through the concrete, a physical blow that made my teeth ache. I saw Caleb flinch, his small body jolting against our father's leg. The vibrations from above, the constant dragging shuffle of the dead, shifted. They changed direction, moving away from the exit we needed. It worked. We turned, a single unit moving toward the promise of escape. Jarek moved faster. He slammed his shoulder into a cracked support pillar. A section of the ceiling groaned. With a grinding tear, a slab of concrete and rebar crashed down between us. Dust exploded, a choking gray cloud. The debris caught my father. I saw his leg buckle, saw his mouth open in a cry of pain. Before the dust settled, Jarek was through the new gap. He snatched Caleb, a lightning-fast motion of pure efficiency. My brother was a doll in his grasp. The shard of glass from before appeared, pressed against Caleb's throat. Jarek looked at me through the haze, his face a blank slate. His lips formed silent words, each shape a new horror. Liabilities hold you back. He jerked his head toward the tunnel he had cleared for himself, for us. Come with me. Survive. The booming echo of the diversion was fading. My father was injured, my brother a hostage. Behind me, from the tunnel I had to take to reach them, a new vibration started. It was not a shuffle. It was a rhythmic, guttural click, a resonant thumping I knew from my maps, from the places marked in red. The clicker was coming. Jarek's boots crunched on a floor of shattered glass. He dragged Dad by the collar, his body limp. Caleb stumbled behind, a ghost clutching a stuffed owl. They were inside what must have been a conservatory, a great dome of iron and glass now surrendering to rot and ruin. Wren slid behind a curtain of oversized ferns, the thick, humid air tasting of soil and decay. Her heart was a cold stone in her chest. Jarek shoved her father against a rusted pillar and began tying his wrists with a length of frayed rope. Despair washed over Wren, thick and suffocating. The floor was a minefield. One wrong step, one single crunch, and Jarek's rebar spear would find her. It was hopeless. Then she saw it. Not just one scene, but 100. In a large, curved pane above her father's head, she saw the back of Jarek's neck, a pale and vulnerable target. To her left, another shard reflected Caleb's small, tear-streaked face, his eyes wide and searching. On the floor, 1,000 fragments of glass held 1,000 fractured images. Dad's bound hands, Jarek's boot, the glint of the rebar spear. The glass house was not a prison. It was an eye. The broken plastic of her cochlear implant scraped against her ear, a useless relic. She did not need to hear. Her entire world was sight, a constant flow of information that others filtered out. She could see Jarek's muscles tense a fraction of a second before he moved. She could see the path through the glass. Her father's knowledge, Caleb's courage, her perception. They were not three broken people. They were a single weapon. She shifted, catching Caleb's eye through the foliage. His breath hitched. She brought her hands up, shielded by a broad, waxy leaf, and began to sign. Hoot. Pain. Drop. Caleb nodded, a barely perceptible motion. He let out a small sob, a sound Jarek ignored with a sneer. Then Caleb's hands fumbled, and the stuffed owl dropped to the ground near a tall, cracked sheet of glass. Jarek didn't even glance at him. Ren drew the slingshot from her pocket. She loaded a steel bearing, pulled the elastic taut, and aimed. Not at Jarek, at the dome high above. The bearing hit with a sharp crack, and a cluster of panes exploded outward. Glass rained down, a deafening, percussive roar that shook the very air. Jarek spun, his body instantly coiled, spear raised toward the source of the immense sound. It was the reaction of an animal, hardwired and absolute. In that same moment, Caleb kicked the stuffed owl. It skidded across the floor and slammed into the cracked pane. The glass gave way with a sharp crash. Drawn by the cascade from above, the dead were already shambling through the new opening in the dome. Now a second sound erupted beside him. Jarek was trapped between two threats, his predator's brain overloaded. He froze, his head snapping from the horde to the broken pane and back again. It was enough. Ren was a blur, sprinting across the glass, her feet finding the clear patches of dirt she had already mapped. She reached her father and her knife sliced through the ropes. She glanced at Caleb, her hands a flurry. S-run. Jarek turned, his face a mask of disbelief, but Ren was already pulling her father away, and Caleb was scrambling toward them. Jarek stood between her family and the dead. He lunged, a final desperate act of will. The horde met him. He was a stone tossed into a churning, hungry river, and then he was gone. They ran, out of the dome, into the biting wind of the coast. Before them lay the causeway, a long, exposed ribbon of concrete stretching across the churning gray water to Port Blossom. The constant roar of the waves was a wall of sound, a promise of a world where sound did not mean death. Her father stopped, his breath ragged. He put a hand on Ren's shoulder. It wasn't a gesture of a protector, but of pure, unvarnished trust. Caleb stood beside her, his face streaked with dirt, looking at her with an expression of pure awe. She was their commander. Ren took the first step onto the causeway, leading them toward the future. In the distance, they could finally see the port. But something was wrong. A single, thick pillar of black smoke twisted into the sky from the heart of the supposed sanctuary.